Aries, let me ask you something, quietly. When was the last time your life wasn't falling apart, but also wasn't moving forward? You're doing what needs to be done. You show up. You handle responsibilities. And yet, there's this strange feeling, like something is holding its breath inside you. Not fear, not failure, just pressure. Almost as if life pressed pause on purpose. Aries, what if this pause wasn't blocking you, but preparing you? What if the message you're about to receive isn't loud, isn't dramatic, but lands so clearly that you sit up straighter without even knowing why? If this resonates, stay with me and tell me in the comments, have you felt this quiet tension lately? Or is it just you? Because what comes next doesn't rush, it reveals. Aries, let me sit with you here for a moment. Not to explain you, not to fix you, just to be honest with you. That quiet pressure you're feeling, it isn't random, and it isn't weakness either. People often misunderstand Aries energy. They think it's always fire on the outside, action, speed, forward motion. But there is another side of Aries that rarely gets talked about, the part of you that knows when not to move. Right now, your energy isn't stuck. It's folded inward, like a flame pulled close to the chest, not to disappear, but to burn more cleanly. You've been carrying more awareness than before. You notice what drains you faster. You sense when a conversation is empty. You feel almost immediately when something is no longer aligned. And instead of reacting, you pause. That pause can feel unfamiliar for someone like you, even uncomfortable. Because Aries is used to trusting momentum, but this stillness is doing something important. It's separating impulse from truth. There's a difference between wanting movement and being ready for the right movement. And lately, you've been listening more carefully to that difference. You may have caught yourself thinking, I could push this forward, but something in me says not yet. That something isn't doubt, it's discernment. Here's the part I want you to hear as a friend. This silence is where your next level of leadership is forming. Not the kind that proves itself, but the kind that knows itself. You're learning how to stand in a room without explaining your presence, how to hold your ground without raising your voice. That's new power, quieter power, but deeper. And let me ask you something gently. When was the last time you trusted your inner timing more than external pressure? Because Aries, not every chapter begins with a loud beginning. Some begin with an internal shift that only you can feel. This phase is teaching you how to recognize what deserves your fire and what no longer earns it. You're not losing energy. You're refining it. And when that message arrives, the one that feels simple, almost understated, you'll recognize it instantly. Not because it excites you, but because it brings clarity. Your body will respond before your mind does. Your posture changes. Your breathing steadies. Your decisions stop arguing with each other. That's how you'll know. So if right now life feels quiet but heavy, gentle but charged, you're not alone in that experience. You're standing at the edge of something honest, something earned, something that doesn't rush you. And I'm curious, Aries, have you noticed yourself becoming more selective lately with where your energy goes and who gets access to it? Because that awareness, that quiet, grounded awareness is where everything begins to shift. Aries, there's something I want to tell you honestly. The way one friend would tell another when the room is quiet and there's no need to impress anyone. That pause you've been living in it didn't arrive by accident. And it didn't arrive because you failed to push hard enough. It showed up because there was something in you that needed to be unlearned before anything new could actually hold. You see, if life had kept moving at the old speed, you would have brought the same instincts with you, the same reflex to take charge too fast, the same habit of controlling the outcome instead of listening to the moment, and none of that makes you wrong. It just means you've outgrown the version of strength that relied on force alone. This pause has been quietly doing a different kind of work. It's been loosening the grip you didn't even realize you were holding, on expectations, on roles you stepped into out of loyalty, on patterns that once kept you safe but now feel heavy. There's a reason things slowed down right when you felt ready to accelerate again. Not to stop you, but to empty your hands. Because Aries, real power doesn't arrive when your hands are full. It arrives when there's space to receive something cleaner, something more aligned, something that doesn't require you to fight your way forward. I know that's uncomfortable for you. Waiting without a clear signal can feel like losing momentum. But what you've been learning here is patience without resignation. You're discovering how to sit with uncertainty without rushing to fill it, how to trust your internal timing even when the outside world keeps asking. So what's next? That's not hesitation. That's maturity. And there's something quietly beautiful about the way this pause has reshaped your awareness. You're not reacting the same way anymore. You're choosing your battles differently. You're noticing where your energy actually matters and where it's been leaking away. That's not emptiness. That's clarity forming. Let me ask you something softly. Have you noticed how certain things that once demanded your attention no longer feel as urgent or as important as they used to? That shift didn't come from exhaustion. It came from growth. This pause has been a recalibration, a moment where your inner compass had time to reset without noise, without pressure. And when movement returns, it won't feel frantic. It won't feel forced. It will feel precise. Not because everything is guaranteed, but because you'll be moving from a place that knows what it no longer needs to carry. That's why this pause mattered. It wasn't here to delay your power. It was here to refine it. And if you're honest with yourself, Aries, somewhere deep inside you already feel that shift beginning. Aries, there's a kind of change that doesn't announce itself. No declarations, no explanations. It happens quietly, almost invisibly, and most people never notice it happening at all. But you do. Lately, you've been catching yourself in moments where the old version of you would have reacted instantly. A sharp reply, a quick decision, a need to take control before the ground even settled. And now, there's a pause inside the pause. You're watching first, feeling the room, letting things reveal themselves instead of chasing clarity. That's not hesitation. That's discernment, waking up. I know this part can feel strange for you, because Aries energy is often described as bold, fast, direct. But the truth is, the most evolved Aries doesn't rush. They read the field before they move. You've stopped proving things that no longer need proof. You don't explain your choices to people who aren't listening anyway. You don't burn energy trying to be understood by those who benefit from misunderstanding you. And that silence you're choosing, it isn't withdrawal, it's containment. There's a difference between being quiet because you're unsure and being quiet because you're clear. What's shifting inside you now is your relationship with your own power. Before, power meant action, momentum, forward force. Now, power feels like restraint, like knowing you could move, but choosing not to until the movement actually matters. That's a deeper kind of strength, one that doesn't need witnesses. You might have noticed that you're less reactive to things that once pulled you in. Drama doesn't hook you the same way. Urgency doesn't control you the way it used to. Even conflict feels different now. Not avoided, just evaluated. That's the inner shift. And it's subtle enough that only you can feel it. Let me ask you something, gently. When was the last time you felt completely at peace, not because everything was resolved, but because you trusted yourself to handle whatever came next? That trust didn't come from winning. It came from experience, from knowing what drains you, from knowing what costs too much, from knowing what no longer deserves access to your fire. You're not pulling back because you're tired, you're pulling back because you're recalibrating. Think of it like this. A flame doesn't always burn high. Sometimes it burns low and steady, conserving energy, waiting for the moment when light actually changes something. That's where you are. And the most important part of this inner shift is that it's teaching you something about timing, not the kind that comes from clocks or deadlines, but the kind that comes from alignment. You're learning to recognize when a move is driven by pressure and when it's guided by truth. That awareness is changing the way you show up in every area of your life, your conversations, your decisions, your boundaries. Nothing dramatic on the surface, everything meaningful underneath. And Aries, this quieter version of you, the one that listens before it acts, the one that doesn't rush to be seen, isn't replacing who you were. It's refining you. You're not losing your fire. You're learning how to aim it. And that inner shift, the one no one applauds, the one no one announces, is exactly what makes what comes next feel different. Because when you do move again, it won't be out of habit. It will be intentional. Aries, this is where things begin to feel different, not louder, not faster, but unmistakably real. Because when the moment arrives, the one that quietly changes your direction, it doesn't announce itself with fireworks. It slips in the way truth usually does, soft, precise, impossible to ignore once you feel it. You might not even recognize it as important at first. It doesn't rush your heartbeat. It doesn't flood you with excitement. It simply lands and something in you straightens. Your shoulders settle. Your breath deepens. Your attention sharpens. That's how you know this message matters. For Aries, clarity rarely comes through noise. It comes through recognition. That subtle internal click when something finally makes sense without needing explanation. This message might show up as a sentence someone says almost casually, yet it lingers in your mind long after the conversation ends. Or it could arrive as an email you weren't expecting, short, direct, leaving more space than answers. Sometimes it's not even spoken aloud. It's a realization, a truth you overhear or finally allow yourself to acknowledge without defending against it. What makes this moment powerful isn't the delivery. It's the alignment. You don't question it. You don't debate it. You don't try to talk yourself out of it. You feel it in your body first. That quiet sense of this changes how I stand in my life. As a friend, I want you to hear this clearly. Not every meaningful shift needs to feel dramatic. Some of the most important turning points arrive calmly because they don't need your adrenaline, they need your presence. This message doesn't push you forward, it repositions you. It reminds you where you belong without asking you to prove anything. It doesn't demand urgency, it invites precision. And that's new for you. Aries is often taught to move by force, to initiate, to lead from the front. But this moment asks something subtler. It asks you to respond instead of react, to choose instead of charge. What's beautiful here is that this message doesn't take anything from you. It returns something you misplaced, your sense of authority over your own direction. You may notice that after this moment, certain conversations feel unnecessary. Certain obligations lose their weight. Certain paths you once considered quietly fall away without resistance. Not because you rejected them, but because they no longer recognize you. Let me ask you something gently. When was the last time a single insight shifted your posture more than 100 arguments ever could? That's the kind of message we're talking about. It doesn't inflate your ego. It doesn't promise outcomes. It simply places you back in your rightful seat. From there, you don't need to rush. You don't need to announce your next move. You don't need to convince anyone. Your energy speaks for you. And here's the part that often surprises Aries the most. Once this message settles, you stop feeling behind. You stop feeling pressured to catch up. You stop measuring yourself against timelines that were never meant for you. You begin to move with an internal authority that doesn't fluctuate based on external validation. That's what being restored to your power feels like. Not amplified, not inflated, aligned. So if something recently crossed your path and you've been quietly thinking about it, replaying it, not because it excites you, but because it feels true, pay attention. That subtle shift, that calm recalibration is not random. It's life gently reminding you where you stand. And once you feel that there's no going back to pretending you didn't hear it. Aries, this is the part most people never warn you about. Stepping back into your power does not feel victorious at first. It feels exposed, unsettling, almost lonely in a way you did not expect. Because real power does not arrive with noise. It does not announce itself. It does not wait for permission or applause. It shows up quietly, and suddenly you realize you cannot keep living the way you used to. You may have noticed this already. There are moments now when you choose your words carefully. Not because you are afraid, but because you are clear. Moments when you feel a firm no rise in your chest, steady and calm, with no anger attached. And instead of explaining it, softening it, or apologizing for it, you let it stand. That can feel uncomfortable for someone like you. Aries energy is often taught that strength means motion, certainty, forward force. But this version of strength asks for something else. It asks you to tolerate the silence that follows honesty. When you stop over-explaining, some people feel confused. When you stop seeking approval, some people feel threatened. Not because you are doing something wrong, but because you are no longer playing a role they understood. And here is the truth: most people never say out loud. Not everyone benefits from your empowerment. Some benefited from your urgency. Some benefited from your loyalty. Some benefited from how quickly you moved to keep things going. This new version of you does not rush to fill gaps, does not jump in to stabilize what is not yours to hold, does not soften your truth just to keep the peace. That can create distance, not dramatic distance, just enough space for reality to show itself. You might feel moments of doubt, not about who you are, but about how others will respond. You may catch yourself wondering if this quieter, firmer version of you is too much or not enough. Let me tell you this as a friend. Discomfort does not mean misalignment. Sometimes it is simply the nervous system adjusting to integrity. Power that is rooted in self-respect feels different in the body. It settles lower. It grounds. It does not need to prove its existence. You are learning how to stand without leaning on reaction, how to move without pushing, how to hold your center even when the room shifts. And yes, Aries, some people will not like this version of you. They may label you distant. They may say you have changed. They may feel the absence of access more than they respect the presence of growth. But here is the deeper layer. You are not here to be liked by everyone. You are here to be aligned with yourself. Let me ask you something gently. When was the last time you felt uncomfortable because you were honoring your truth, not because you were abandoning it? That discomfort is not a warning sign. It is a threshold. You are crossing from external validation into internal authority, from movement driven by urgency into action guided by clarity. This stage does not ask you to harden. It asks you to be honest, with yourself first. And once you allow that honesty to exist without justification, something begins to change around you. Conversations shift. Dynamics rearrange. Life starts responding to the version of you that no longer negotiates their own worth. This is not a performance of strength. It is the embodiment of it. And even if it feels unfamiliar now, your system knows this place. It recognizes the steadiness, the grounded fire. You are not stepping away from who you are. You are stepping fully into it. Even if it takes a moment to get used to standing there, Aries, there's a moment that comes after you stop explaining yourself and before the world fully catches on. It's quiet, almost tender. This is where you are now, not leaving in anger, not burning bridges, not making a scene, just noticing with surprising clarity what you no longer need to carry forward. You may have felt it recently, that subtle resistance in your body when you start to say yes out of habit, and something inside gently pulls you back, not with force, with honesty. Some responsibilities no longer fit the shape of who you've become, not because they were wrong, but because they belong to a version of you that was still learning how to survive by holding everything together. You've done that work already. And there's something deeply mature about realizing you don't have to announce what you're releasing. You don't owe a speech. You don't owe justification. You simply stop placing your energy where it quietly disappears. That's not avoidance. That's discernment. You're beginning to recognize the difference between commitment and obligation, between generosity and self-abandonment, between patience that heals and patience that slowly erodes your sense of self. This part can feel strange, because for a long time, your strength was measured by how much you could endure, how much you could carry without complaint, how quickly you could stabilize a situation even when it cost you peace. But Aries, endurance is not the same as alignment, and carrying weight that isn't yours doesn't make you noble, it makes you tired. Now, something else is guiding you, a quieter intelligence, one that asks, before you step in, is this truly mine to hold? You're not becoming less caring. You're becoming more precise with your care. There's a difference. You may notice that certain dynamics begin to shift without you doing anything dramatic. Some people stop leaning on you the way they used to. Some expectations dissolve on their own. Some requests never come again. Not because you push them away, but because your energy no longer signals availability for misuse. That's real power. And here's the part I want you to feel, not just understand. Letting go like this doesn't make you colder. It makes you clearer. It creates space for your fire to be used with intention instead of being scattered across demands that never truly nourished you. You're learning how to protect your energy without hardening your heart, how to say no internally before you ever have to say it out loud. That takes practice and compassion, especially toward the part of you that learned to be needed in order to feel safe. Let me ask you something softly. What would your days feel like if you only carried what actually belonged to you? Not what was inherited, not what was assumed, not what you once accepted out of loyalty or fear. Just what is truly yours. There's no rush to answer that. This phase isn't asking for immediate action. It's inviting awareness, and as that awareness deepens, you may feel lighter in ways that are hard to explain, less reactive, more present, more at home in your own rhythm. This is how strength matures, not through conquest, but through conscious release. You are not shrinking your life by carrying less. You are making room for something more honest to enter. And as you move forward now, you'll notice that what stays with you does so because it resonates, not because you forced yourself to endure it. That's not loss. That's alignment quietly taking shape. Aries, something subtle begins to happen once you stop carrying what was never yours. Not all at once, not dramatically, but steadily, like the room adjusting to your presence after you finally sit where you belong. You may notice it first in small ways. Conversations feel simpler. Choices stop pulling you in opposite directions. There is less friction in places that used to exhaust you, not because life suddenly became generous, but because you are no longer negotiating your position within it. There is a quiet intelligence in alignment. When you stand in the right place, things do not need to chase you. They recognize you. Opportunities do not shout anymore. They present themselves clearly, almost politely, as if they are saying, "Here you are, now that you are ready to see me." What changes most is the way decisions land in your body. Before, every choice came with weight. Second guessing. The sense that you had to push through resistance just to move forward. Now, decisions arrive softer. You still think. You still reflect. But the internal argument quiets down. You are no longer forcing momentum. You are allowing direction. That difference matters more than it seems. When effort is replaced by alignment, energy stops leaking. You are not drained by every step. You are not constantly correcting course. You move once with intention, and the ground meets you. There is relief in that. Not the kind that makes you passive, the kind that makes you precise. And this is where many Aries have a realization that changes everything. The pause was never about delay. It was about placement. You were not behind. You were repositioning. Think about it. How many times did you push forward in the past simply because movement felt safer than stillness? How often did you act quickly just to escape uncertainty? Now, uncertainty does not threaten you the same way. You can sit with it, listen to it, let it inform you instead of rush you. That shift allows life to respond differently. People respond differently, not necessarily kinder, but clearer. They sense your steadiness, they adjust. And those who do not adjust reveal something important, not as a problem, as information. That clarity is a gift. It saves you time, it saves you energy, it saves you from repeating lessons you already outgrew. There's something deeply grounding about realizing I am not stuck, I am not late, I am not failing, I am preparing to move without resistance, preparing to choose without fear, preparing to build without burning myself down in the process. Let me ask you something gently. What would it feel like to trust that the way things are unfolding is responding to who you are becoming, not who you used to be? Because that is the truth of this moment. Life is not testing you, it is adjusting to you. And the more you remain where you are now, present, clear-rooted, the more the path ahead begins to organize itself, not into certainty, into coherence. You are still Aries, still decisive, still capable of bold movement, but now your fire has direction, your action has context, your momentum has meaning. And that is why things feel lighter. Not because the journey is over, but because you are finally walking it from the right place. That realization alone changes how everything responds to you. Aries, this is where the story softens, not because it loses strength, but because strength no longer needs to prove itself. There is a quiet dignity in endings that do not demand attention, no slammed doors, no dramatic goodbyes, just a gentle awareness settling in, the kind that lets you know something has completed its work. You may not feel relief the way you expected. What you feel instead is steadiness, a grounded sense that the chapter you lived through did exactly what it needed to do. It taught you discernment. It taught you timing. It taught you how to stand still without abandoning yourself. That is not small. And I want to be honest with you here, as one person speaking to another who has lived long enough to recognize truth when it arrives quietly. You are not going back to who you were before this pause. Not because you are rejecting that version of yourself, but because you have outgrown the need to operate from survival. That earlier version did the best they could. They moved fast because they had to. They held everything together because no one else would. They stepped forward, even when it cost them peace. You do not need to fight that version of yourself. You can thank them, and then let them rest. What begins now does not require urgency. It asks for presence. It does not demand courage in the way people usually imagine it. It asks for honesty. The honesty to admit when something no longer resonates. The honesty to choose quality over speed. The honesty to build a life that feels internally consistent, even if it looks quieter from the outside. This is what a strong beginning looks like at this stage of life. Not explosive, not reckless, but intentional. You may notice that your instincts feel different now. Less reactive, more deliberate. You still feel the fire, but it burns from a deeper place. It warms instead of consumes. That is power returning to its rightful owner. And here's something worth holding gently. When you move from this place, you do not need to announce your direction. Your alignment will speak for you. Your presence will communicate what words no longer need to. Some people will sense the change immediately. Others will not. That is not your responsibility to manage. Your responsibility is to stay rooted in what feels true. Let me ask you something softly. What would it mean to trust that the life forming ahead of you does not require you to rush toward it, but to meet it with clarity when it arrives? This ending is not an erasure. It is an integration. Everything you learned, everything you carried, everything you released has shaped the ground beneath your feet. From here, movement happens differently. It is not driven by pressure. It is guided by recognition. You will know when to step forward, not because something forces you to, but because your body and your values move together. That is what it means to walk from restored power. Not louder, not harder, truer. And as this new cycle opens, you do not need to rush to define it. You are allowed to let it reveal itself one honest step at a time. That quiet confidence you feel now, that sense of being settled in yourself, is not the end of your fire. It is the beginning of a steadier flame. Aries, as we come to the edge of this conversation, notice something small with me. Notice how your body feels right now. Not energized, not rushed, just present. That's not accidental. Here's a thought you may not have considered before. Sometimes the real sign that a pause has ended is not movement at all, but the moment you stop needing proof that you are ready. So let me ask you this, gently. What if the next step doesn't require courage but honesty? Here's a quiet observation. When people truly return to their power, they speak less about it and listen more to what no longer asks for their attention. So for a moment, stay silent inside. No fixing, no planning, just listen. And try this simple inner exercise tonight. Before you sleep, ask yourself one question without answering it right away. What am I no longer meant to carry into tomorrow? Let the answer come on its own. It always does. I'll leave you with this. There was a time when I thought strength meant always moving forward. I learned later it also means knowing when you've already arrived. If this message touched something real in you, Tell me in the comments what part stayed with you the longest. And if you feel called, subscribe so you don't miss what comes next. Trust yourself, Aries. This journey doesn't end here. It continues quietly. And the next message will find you when it's time.